The massive structure floated in the darkness of space, a testament to the architectural marvels possible when advanced civilizations pool their knowledge. The council chamber, a perfect ring of metal and light, orbited the neutral world of Centauri Prime, serving as the diplomatic heart of the known galaxy. Inside its curved walls, beings from across the cosmos sat in their designated seats, a diverse assembly representing the collective wisdom and power of dozens of starfaring species. Some council members had scales that shimmered under the artificial lighting, others sported fur in patterns that defied natural explanation. A few were made of pure energy, contained within specialized fields that allowed them to interact with their physical counterparts. All eyes were fixed on the holographic display in the center of the room, where data about an impending conflict flickered in three-dimensional detail. Commander Jake Morrison stood near the back wall, his posture rigid and formal. He wore his human military uniform, dark blue with silver insignia that marked his rank in service. His face showed no emotion as he watched the aliens discuss his species' fate with clinical detachment. Next to him, Ambassador Kate Sullivan adjusted her tablet, her fingers moving quickly across the screen as she documented the proceedings and prepared counterarguments. "The simulation is complete," Vorath announced. The reptilian war marshal's voice echoed through the chamber, carrying the weight of his 2 centuries of military experience. His yellow eyes gleamed as he manipulated the hologram with his clawed hand. "The Krath fleet will reach human territory in 48 hours. Once battle begins, humanity will fall within 4 to 6 hours." The hologram showed red ships advancing toward blue dots that represented human colonies. Numbers scrolled beside the image. 300 Krath warships against fewer than 100 human vessels. The math looked simple. The outcome seemed certain. Zalera, the ancient crystalline being who led the council, tilted her head slowly. Light reflected through her transparent body, creating prismatic patterns on the floor. "This analysis is confirmed." Her voice sounded like wind chimes, a melody that had presided over council deliberations for longer than humanity had known of the stars. "Yes, Chairwoman," Vorath tapped his display. "We have data from the Kratha's last 17 conquests. They have perfected warfare over 3,000 years. Humanity has only been in space for 150 years. Their military tactics are primitive. Their weapons are adequate but not exceptional. Their formations follow basic defensive patterns." Another council member, a floating blob of blue gas, spoke up. "What about human unpredictability? We have heard stories." Vorath made a dismissive gesture. "Stories and myths. Our computers have analyzed every human military engagement on record. They follow predictable patterns once pressed. They will attempt to defend their colony world. They will form a defensive line. The Krath will break through using standard hammer formation. It is mathematics, not speculation." Jake felt his jaw tighten, but he remained silent. Kate glanced at him with a slight shake of her head. "Not yet." The hologram played out the predicted battle. Red ships smashed through blue formations. Human vessels exploded in silent bursts of light. Colony worlds went dark. The simulation showed every detail of humanity's predicted defeat. "The Krath are already celebrating," another council member said. "They have announced they will add Earth to their empire within 1 season." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some sounded sympathetic, others resigned. A few sounded almost eager to see the young human species put in its place. Vorath continued, "I recommend we begin evacuation protocols immediately. If we start now, we can save perhaps 30% of the human population from the major colonies. The rest," he paused, "the rest will be enslaved or eliminated per Krath custom." "That is unacceptable," Kate said loudly. Every eye in the chamber turned toward her. She walked forward, her heels clicking on the metal floor. "We request 48 hours before any intervention." Vorath's laugh was harsh. "Ambassador Sullivan, did you not see the simulation? Your people will be destroyed." "Perhaps," Kate stopped at her designated spot. "But humanity has a right to defend itself without interference. If the Council begins evacuations now, it will cause panic. It will disrupt our defensive preparations. We asked for 48 hours to handle this our way. Zalara steadied the human woman. You seem confident despite the analysis. I have confidence in my people, Kate replied simply. Another council member, an insect-like being with multiple eyes, spoke. This is pride talking. Voratha's simulations have never been wrong. The Krath are the most dangerous military force in this sector. They do not lose battles. Jake finally spoke. Neither do we. The chamber fell silent. Jake walked forward to stand beside Kate. With respect, War Marshal Vorath, your analysis is based on incomplete data. Incomplete? Voratha's eyes narrowed. We have access to every human military database, every battle record, every tactical manual. Yes, Jake agreed. You have access to everything we've shown you, but there's a difference between what you see and what you understand. Explain, Zalara commanded. Jake met her crystalline gaze. Humanity spent 3,000 years fighting itself before we reached the stars. We've studied war longer than we've had space travel. We've read about every type of conflict, every strategy, every mistake. When the Krath conquered their 17 civilizations, we studied those battles, too. We studied them very carefully. Vorath waved a dismissive claw. Studying and executing are different things. The Krath have experience. They have perfected their methods through countless victories. Exactly, Jake said quietly. They've perfected a method. One method. They've won so many times that they've stopped evolving. They fight today the same way they fought 1,000 years ago. Because it works, Vor insisted, against enemies who fight predictably. Jake looked around the chamber. Against civilizations that use standard military doctrine. But humanity didn't learn warfare from galactic textbooks. We learned it from each other, from thousands of different cultures with thousands of different approaches. We request 48 hours, Kate added. If we're wrong, you can begin your evacuations then. If we're right, she smiled slightly, well, then your simulations will need updating. Zara was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she spoke. The Council grants your request. 48 hours, but we will deploy observer ships to document the battle. When it begins, we will be ready to evaluate survivors. Thank you, Chairwoman, Kate said with a bow. As the council session ended and beings began filing out, Vorath approached Jake and Kate. I hope you understand that I take no pleasure in this, he said quietly. But I have seen war for 2 centuries. I know how this ends. Jake looked at the old warrior. So do we, War Marshal. So do we. Later, as Jake and Kate rode the shuttle back to the human embassy, Kate finally asked, Are you certain about this? Jake looked out at the stars. Admiral Carter has been planning for this exact scenario for 10 years. Every simulation we've run ends the same way. In our victory, in less than 15 minutes. Jake smiled grimly. The council predicted hours. We're going to give them minutes. Kate leaned back in her seat. They're going to be very surprised. That's the plan, Jake said. That's always been the plan. Admiral Ryan Carter stood in the command center of Earth's orbital defense station, watching dozens of screens display information from across human space. He was a tall man with gray hair and steady hands. Those hands had commanded fleets through 3 smaller conflicts, but nothing like what was coming. Status report, he said calmly. Captain Lisa Hayes looked up from her console. The Krath fleet crossed into monitored space 20 minutes ago. They're maintaining formation, heading directly for New Haven Colony. Arrival in 41 hours. Ryan nodded slowly. Just like the simulations predicted. Every single time, Lisa confirmed. They haven't deviated from their standard approach pattern in any of the 17 conquests we studied. A door hissed open and Dr. Ben Park walked in carrying a data pad. The weapons specialist looked tired but excited. Admiral, Project Checkmate is complete. All 80 ships have been retrofitted. Show me, Ryan said. Ben activated the wall display. A schematic of Krath shield technology appeared, rotating slowly. The Krath shields have 3 layers. The outer layer deflects energy weapons. The middle layer absorbs kinetic impacts. The inner layer protects against radiation and extreme temperatures. We know this. Lisa said impatiently, yes, but look here. Ben zoomed in on the connection points between layers. The shields rotate frequencies every 3 seconds to prevent sustained bombardment from breaking through. It's an elegant system, unbreakable by conventional weapons. But not by ours, Ryan said. Ben grinned. Not anymore. We've modified every weapon on our ships to pulse at a specific frequency. When the Krath shields rotate, there's a microsecond gap. Our sensors can detect that gap. Our weapons fire in that exact microsecond. Lisa leaned forward. That's incredibly precise timing. Which is why we've been practicing for 6 months, Ben replied. Every gunnery crew has run this drill 10,000 times. They can do it in their sleep. Ryan walked to the main display showing the deployment map. 80 blue icons surrounded the planet New Haven in what looked like a defensive formation. Do the Council observers suspect anything? No, sir, Lieutenant Greg Foster answered from the communication station. They see us setting up exactly as they predicted. Standard defensive perimeter. They think we're going to make a brave last stand. Good. Ryan's eyes moved across the display. The Krath have won 17 times because everyone fights them the same way. Direct engagement. Ship against ship. They're bigger, stronger, and more experienced. In a fair fight, they win every time. So we don't give them a fair fight, Lisa said. Exactly. Ryan pulled up another screen. In every battle the Krath have fought, they use the same formations. The hammer, the spear, the anvil. It's doctrine, it's tradition, it's worked for 3,000 years, so they never changed it. Ben pointed at the Krath fleet composition. 300 ships. 60 heavy cruisers in the front line, 120 medium destroyers in support, 100 light frigates for flanking, 20 command ships in protected center position. The same composition they've used in their last 8 conquests, Ryan noted. They're predictable. We've had 23 days to track their approach. In that time, they haven't changed speed, heading, or formation once. Lisa pulled up a new display. Admiral, we've identified their command ship. The War Leader Thrar commands from the center, protected by the heaviest vessels. If we disable him first, their command structure breaks down. They rely too much on centralized command. Greg added, our analysis shows that when their leadership is disrupted, it takes them an average of 8 minutes to reorganize. That's a lifetime in combat. Ryan turned to face his officers. Humanity has been fighting wars for our entire history. We've made every mistake possible. We've learned from every defeat. The one lesson that matters most is this: you don't win by being stronger. You win by being smarter. He activated the tactical display. The Krath will arrive expecting a desperate defense. They'll see our ships spread out protecting the colony. They'll advance in hammer formation because it's what they always do. They'll broadcast their surrender demand because it's tradition. And then, Ben asked, though he already knew, then we show them something they've never seen before. Ryan's finger traced patterns on the screen. We've divided our fleet into 12 strike groups. Each group has 7 ships. When the battle begins, we don't hold position. We don't defend. We attack. Lisa highlighted the movements. Strike groups Alpha through Delta hit their flanks simultaneously. Groups Echo through Hotel target their support vessels. Groups India through Lima go straight for the command cluster, but not in straight lines. Ryan emphasized, we use micro jumps. Short-range FTL bursts. Jump in, fire, jump out. The Krath shields are designed to handle sustained fire, Ben added. They're not optimized for rapid repositioning attacks. And with our modified weapons punching through their shields, each hit will do maximum damage. We're not trying to overpower their defenses. We're bypassing them completely. Greg spoke up from his station. Admiral, New Haven Colony Defense Coordinator is asking if they should begin evacuations. Negative, Ryan said firmly. Any evacuation will be detected by Council observers and reported to the Krath. We need the enemy to believe we're protecting a fully populated world. They're arrogant. They'll want the glory of conquering a defended colony. Risky, Lisa observed. This entire plan is risky, Ryan admitted. But we've simulated this battle 467 times. In 467 simulations, we won. Average time, 11 minutes and 32 seconds. Ben looked at the screens showing the approaching Krath fleet. They've defeated 17 civilizations. Some of those species were in space before humans existed. What makes us different? Ryan considered the question. Those civilizations relied on what they knew. They used proven tactics, standard formations, predictable strategies. They fought the way everyone fights. He looked at each of his officers. Humanity doesn't have proven tactics because we're too young. We don't have standard formations because we haven't been in space long enough to develop them. We don't use predictable strategies because we don't know what's predictable yet. Our inexperience is our advantage, Lisa said slowly. Exactly. The Krath have studied galactic warfare. They know how everyone fights, but they can't predict us because we fight like nobody else. We're not bound by 3,000 years of doctrine. We can try things that seem crazy to them. Greg received a message and read it aloud. Council observers report the Krath fleet is maintaining course. They estimate battle will commence in 38 hours. Observers are positioning their ships to record the engagement. Let them watch, Ryan said quietly. Let them record. Let them send it to every corner of the galaxy. Because in 38 hours, the Krath are going to learn something important. What's that, sir? Greg asked. Ryan smiled coldly. That humanity doesn't lose. The command center fell silent except for the quiet beeping of consoles and the hum of computers. Outside the windows, Earth rotated slowly below them, blue and green and beautiful. Somewhere out there, 300 enemy ships approached with absolute confidence. They had no idea what was waiting for them. Commander Alex Bennett checked his fighter systems one more time. Everything showed green. Behind him, 23 other fighters from Squadron 7 waited in the launch bay. Through the viewport, he could see the planet New Haven hanging in space, peaceful and unaware. All squadrons, sound off. Captain Lisa Hayes' voice came through the comm. One by one, squadron leaders reported ready status. Alex keyed his mic. Squadron 7, ready for launch. Acknowledged, 7. Stand by. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez sat in the captain's chair of the frigate Dancing Blade. Her ship was smaller than most in the fleet, fast and nimble. Around her, the bridge crew worked quietly, checking weapons and shields. Ma'am, I'm detecting massive FTL signatures. Her sensor officer called out. Range 2 million kilometers, 300 contacts. It's the Krath fleet. Amy felt her heart beat faster, but kept her voice steady. Battle stations. All hands to combat positions. Comm. Signal the flagship. Far away on a council observer ship, Vorath watched his displays with grim satisfaction. The Krath fleet had arrived exactly on schedule. He could see the human ships scattered around New Haven, trying to form a defensive perimeter. They're brave, his assistant said quietly. Foolish, but brave. Record everything, Vorath ordered. When this is over, these recordings will serve as a lesson to other young species. Pride leads to destruction. The Krath fleet moved forward in perfect formation. The massive ships advanced like a wall of metal and weapons. At their center, War Leader Thraw stood on his command deck, his forearms crossed in satisfaction. The humans prepare to defend, his tactical officer reported. 80 vessels, small craft. They position themselves between us and the planet. Thra laughed, a deep rumbling sound. They think their small fleet can stop us. Admirable, futile. Open a channel across all frequencies. Thrax's voice boomed. Humans of New Haven and Earth. You face the Krath Empire. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Resist and we will make examples of your entire species. You have 60 seconds to comply. On the orbital defense station, Admiral Ryan Carter listened to the message. He glanced at Captain Lisa Hayes. How theatrical. Should we respond, sir? Greg Foster asked from communications. Ryan walked to the comm station and opened the channel himself. War Leader Thra, this is Admiral Ryan Carter of the Human Defense Fleet. I have 5 words for you. He paused. You came to the wrong neighborhood. Then he cut the transmission and said, all ships execute Plan Cascade. Instantly, 80 human ships broke formation. They didn't scatter randomly. They moved with precision, each ship jumping to predetermined coordinates. Micro-FTL bursts carried them across thousands of kilometers in seconds. On the Council observer ship, Vorith stood up sharply. What are they doing? That's not defensive positioning. They're everywhere, his assistant said in shock. The Krath fleet tried to track the human vessels, but they kept jumping. Short bursts impossible to predict. One moment a human ship was on their left, the next it was behind them. Then it was above them. All ships maintain hammer formation, Thra commanded. They're trying to confuse us. Hold position and wait for them to commit. But the humans didn't commit. They kept moving, jumping, repositioning. Then, without warning, they all fired at once. Commander Alex Bennett led his squadron in from the Krath fleet's right flank. All fighters, weapons hot. Target the destroyer cluster. Fire on my mark. He waited for his computer to sync with the other squadrons. Mark. 24 fighters launched missiles simultaneously. The missiles were timed perfectly. They struck the Krath shields during the microsecond rotation gap that Dr. Ben Park had identified. The shields flickered. The missiles went through. 12 Krath destroyers lost power instantly. Impossible, Vorith whispered, watching from his observation post. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez brought her frigate in close to a Krath heavy cruiser. The big ship's weapons tracked toward her, but she was already jumping. She reappeared behind it and fired. Her weapons found that tiny gap in the shields. The cruiser's engines exploded. Dancing blade to all ships, Amy's voice carried across the battle network. The modifications work. Their shields are useless. War Leader Thra watched his tactical display in disbelief. Red icons representing his ships blinked and went dark. 10 ships. 20, 30. How are they doing this? He roared. Their weapons should not penetrate our shields. War Leader, they're not trying to overpower the shields, his tactical officer said frantically. They're going through them during the rotation cycle. It's as if they know exactly when the gap appears. That's impossible. No species has ever cracked our shield rotation. The humans have, sir, Thrax snarled. Execute spear formation. Concentrate all firepower on the center. We'll overwhelm them with pure destruction. The Krath fleet tried to reorganize. The heavy cruisers moved forward, forming a pointed attack formation. It was a formation they'd used successfully for centuries, a formation that had broken through the defenses of 17 civilizations. Admiral Ryan Carter watched the Krath ships move on his display. They're doing spear formation just like we predicted. Strike groups echo through hotel, you're clear to engage. Lisa Hayes ordered, target their command cluster now. 6 human strike groups, 42 ships total, appeared around the protected center of the Krath fleet. They jumped right into the most defended position. It should have been suicide. Instead, they opened fire with devastating accuracy. Captain Dan Wright commanded the carrier Eagle's Reach. His ship was larger than most human vessels, designed to launch bombers. All bomber wings, you have clearance. Target that command ship, the big one in the center. 60 bombers launched from the Eagle's Reach and 2 other carriers. They swarmed toward War Leader Thraw's flagship like angry insects. The Krath Point defense systems fired desperately, but the bombers were too small, too fast, too many. The modified bombs struck the flagship's shields during the rotation gap. The shields collapsed. The bombs hit the command ship's hull and burrowed inside before exploding. War Leader Thraw was thrown across his command deck. Alarms screamed. Fires erupted. His tactical display went dark. War Leader, we've lost main power, someone shouted. Life support is failing. Weapons are offline. Thraw pulled himself up. Blood running from a cut on his scaled head. All ships regroup. Focus defense on. But his communication system was dead. He couldn't command his fleet. He could only watch the review port as his ships tried to fight without orders. The Krath fleet was chaos now. Without central command, captains made their own decisions. Some tried to retreat, others attacked blindly. A few attempted to form defensive positions. None of it worked. The human ships moved like dancers, appearing and disappearing, firing with perfect accuracy. Every shot found that microsecond gap. Every strike disabled rather than destroyed. Vorath sat heavily in his chair, his eyes fixed on the displays. They're not trying to kill them, he said in wonder. They're disabling them. Every shot is precise. Engines, weapons, shields. They're neutralizing the threat without unnecessary death. How long has it been? His assistant asked. Vor checked the timer. 8 minutes since first contact. On the dancing blade, Amy Rodriguez's crew cheered as another Krath ship powered down. Her sensor officer called out, "Ma'am, I'm reading Krath ships attempting to flee. Their FTL drives are charging." "Strike Group Alpha, this is Rodriguez," Amy said. "Krath vessels attempting escape. Request permission to intercept." Admiral Carter's voice came back immediately. "Permission granted. Block their escape routes. Do not let them leave. We need them all here." Human ships jumped ahead of the fleeing Krath vessels, cutting off their exit. The trapped ships found themselves surrounded, their shields useless, their weapons disabled, their commanding officers silenced. One by one, they powered down their weapons. Commander Alex Bennett and his squadron circled the battlefield, escorting disabled Krath ships to safe orbit. Squadron 7 to command. I count 286 disabled enemy vessels. 14 destroyed by secondary explosions before we could prevent it. 0 human casualties. Confirmed, 7, Lisa Hayes responded. She looked at Admiral Carter. "Sir, I believe the battle is over." Ryan Carter looked at his timer. 12 minutes and 17 seconds since the Krath fleet arrived. He opened all channels. "All Krath vessels, this is Admiral Ryan Carter. You are defeated, but not destroyed. Power down your remaining systems and prepare for rescue operations. We will provide medical assistance and life support. Resist and we will be forced to destroy you completely. You have 60 seconds to comply." Across the battlefield, the last Krath ships went dark, their crews accepting the impossible truth. They had lost, not in hours, in minutes. ## Chapter 5, Aftermath. On the Council observer ship, Vorath couldn't speak. He simply stared at the battlefield where 300 Krath ships sat disabled, surrounded by 80 victorious human vessels. Captain Dan Wright stood on the bridge of the Eagle's Reach, watching the tactical display as his bomber wings returned from their successful strike. Around the carrier, the battlefield looked nothing like anyone had expected. Instead of debris and destruction, there were simply disabled ships floating in orbit. "All bombers recovered, Captain," his flight operations officer reported. 0 losses, minor damage to 3 craft from Krath Point defense, but everyone's coming home. Dan allowed himself a small smile. "Good work. Get the damaged crews on those repairs immediately. We still have a job to do. On the dancing blade, Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez was already moving to the next phase. Helm, take us to grid position 77. Sensors, scan for Krath escape pods and life signs. Ma'am, detecting 17 escape pods from that destroyer we disabled. They're drifting. Life support shows green. Launch recovery shuttles. Get those Krath crews to safety. Amy pulled up the fleet-wide communications. All ships begin rescue operations. Priority is saving lives, not taking prisoners. Across the battlefield, human ships moved among the disabled Krath vessels. Medical shuttles launched. Engineering teams prepared to provide emergency life support. It was organized chaos, but every human crew knew their role. Admiral Ryan Carter watched it all unfold from his command center. The main display showed the entire operation. 80 human ships managing 300 disabled enemy vessels. It should have been impossible. Instead, it looked almost routine. Admiral, Council Observer Voreth is requesting communication, Greg Foster said. Put him through. Voreth's reptilian face appeared on the screen. He looked older somehow, his eyes showing something Ryan recognized, the look of someone whose understanding of the universe had just been shattered. Admiral Carter, Voreth said slowly. I need to understand what just happened. Ryan gestured to the display. We fought a battle, War Marshal. We won. In 12 minutes, Voreth's voice carried disbelief. The Krath Empire. 3,000 years of military dominance. 17 conquered civilizations. Defeated in 12 minutes by a species that has been in space for only 150 years. 12 minutes and 17 seconds, Captain Lisa Hayes corrected quietly. Voreth continued as if he hadn't heard. Your weapons, they penetrated Krath's shields as if the shields weren't even there. How? Ryan considered how much to reveal. Then he decided the truth was important. We studied them for 10 years. We analyzed every Krath battle, every formation, every tactic, every technology. We found the weakness in their shield rotation and designed weapons specifically to exploit it. 10 years, Voreth repeated. You prepared for this exact battle for 10 years? We prepared for every possible battle, Ryan corrected. The Krath were just one scenario. We have similar contingencies for every major military power in the galaxy. Voreth's eyes widened. Every major power? Defensive contingencies only, Ryan assured him. We don't want to fight anyone, but if we have to defend ourselves, we'll be ready. On War Leader Thrax's disabled flagship, emergency crews worked to restore life support. The command deck was dark except for emergency lighting. Thra sat in his command chair, staring at nothing. His tactical officer approached cautiously. War Leader, the humans are sending medical teams. They offer assistance. Thra laughed bitterly. Of course they do. They defeat us completely and then offer help. It's humiliating, sir. 73 of our ships have critical damage. Without assistance, thousands of Krath warriors will die. Thra closed his eyes. Pride warred with responsibility. Finally, responsibility won. Accept their help. Tell our crews to cooperate fully. We have lost. There is no shame in accepting mercy from the victor. The tactical officer hesitated. War Leader, how did they defeat us so quickly? Our shield should have held. Our formations are proven. Our tactics have worked for millennia. That's exactly why we lost, Thrax said quietly. Our tactics worked for millennia. We never changed them because we never needed to. We became predictable. We became arrogant. We assumed that because we always won, we always would win. He looked at his officer. The humans studied us while we ignored them. They found our weakness while we were too proud to believe we had any weakness. We forgot the first rule of warfare. Never underestimate your enemy. Lieutenant Megan Torres piloted her bomber back to the Eagle's Reach. her crew quiet behind her. They'd just participated in history. They'd helped disable the command ship of the most feared military force in the sector in less time than it took to eat lunch. "Torres, you still with us?" her co-pilot asked. "Yeah, just thinking. We trained for this for 6 months, practiced that bombing run 10,000 times, and when it mattered, it worked exactly like it was supposed to." "That's the scary part," her co-pilot said. "It wasn't luck, it was planning. The Admiral knew exactly how this would go." Megan nodded. "Makes you wonder what else he's planned for." At the Galactic Council station, Chairwoman Zyler watched the battle recordings for the 3rd time. Around her, other council members did the same. Some looked impressed. Others looked worried. A few looked frightened. "They didn't just win," a council member said. "They dominated completely, decisively, without taking losses. And they showed mercy." Another added, "They could have destroyed the entire Krath fleet. Instead, they disabled and captured them. Now they're rendering aid." Zyra spoke thoughtfully. "Ambassador Kate Sullivan said humanity would handle this their way. I don't think any of us understood what that meant." On her screen, human medical ships moved among the Krath vessels, saving lives, providing assistance. The same vessels that had just defeated them were now helping them survive. "This changes everything," Zyra continued. "The Krath were our standard for military power. If humanity can defeat them this easily, then humanity is now the standard." Vorath finished. He joined the council viewing remotely. "And they're not just powerful. They're different. They think differently. They fight differently. They win differently." Back at the Orbital Defense Station, Admiral Ryan Carter received updates from all ships. Rescue operations were proceeding smoothly. The Krath were cooperating. No further incidents. "Admiral, we're getting messages from across human space," Greg Foster reported. "New Haven Colony is safe. They're asking if they can thank you personally." "Tell them we were just doing our job," Ryan said. "Sir, I'm also receiving communications from Earth," Greg continued. "The news networks are calling it the 12-minute war. They want interviews, press conferences, statements." Ryan sighed. He hated press conferences. "Tell them we'll make an official statement once all rescue operations are complete. Right now, we have Krath crews that need help." Lisa Hayes looked at her commander. "Sir, you do realize what you've done, right? You've rewritten galactic warfare. Every military in the galaxy is going to study this battle." "Good," Ryan said. "Let them study it. Let them learn. The lesson isn't about how to defeat the Krath. The lesson is about how to think differently, how to prepare, how to adapt." He looked at the display, showing human ships working to save their former enemies. "The Council predicted ours because they thought we'd fight like everyone else. We won in minutes because we didn't. We fought like humans. We prepared. We adapted. And we showed mercy when we could have shown destruction." Captain Dan Wright's voice came over the command channel. "Admiral, this is Eagle's Reach. We've successfully rescued all crew from 6 disabled Krath vessels. Medical teams report most injuries are minor. They're surprised we're helping them." "Tell them that's what humans do," Ryan replied. "We defend fiercely, but once the battle ends, we help everyone we can, even former enemies." Commander Alex Bennett and his squadron escorted the last group of disabled Krath ships to safe orbit. He looked at the planet New Haven below, peaceful and secure. His radio crackled with chatter from other squadrons, all reporting successful missions, 0 casualties, objectives achieved. "Squadron 7, this is Bennett. Job well done, everyone. Let's head home." As his fighters turned back toward their carrier, Alex thought about what his grandmother used to say. She'd been a soldier in the old wars on Earth before humanity reached the stars. The hardest part of fighting, she'd told him, is knowing when to stop. Today, humanity had fought perfectly and stopped at exactly the right moment. Not when the enemy was destroyed, but when the enemy was defeated. There was a difference, and that difference mattered. The 12-minute war was over. The real work of peace was just beginning. 1 week after the battle, the Galactic Council chambers were filled to capacity. Every member species had sent representatives. Observer species, who normally didn't attend, had requested special permission to watch. The chamber hummed with conversations in 100 different languages. Ambassador Kate Sullivan walked to the human delegation area with Commander Jake Morrison beside her. She could feel every eye in the chamber tracking them. Some looked at them with respect, others with fear, a few with something close to worship. "Feels different than last week," Jake said quietly. "Everything's different now," Kate replied. Chairwoman Zalara called the chamber to order. Her crystalline form reflected the lights, sending rainbow patterns across the walls. The council convenes to discuss the recent conflict between the Krath Empire and humanity. Ambassador Sullivan, Commander Morrison, you have the floor. Kate stood and walked to the center speaking position. "Thank you, Chairwoman. 1 week ago, this council predicted that humanity would fall to the Krath in 4 to 6 hours. The battle lasted 12 minutes and 17 seconds. I'm here to explain why the prediction was wrong and what this means for all of us." She activated a holographic display. Commander Morrison will present the military analysis. Jake stepped forward. War Marshal Voratha's simulation was accurate based on the information available. The problem was that the information was incomplete. When we joined the Galactic Council, we shared our military databases as required. What we didn't share were our strategic planning documents and tactical innovations. "You withheld information?" a council member asked sharply. "We shared everything we were required to share," Jake replied calmly. "We didn't lie. We just didn't reveal our entire hand. Would any of you share your complete military strategies with species you barely know?" Silence answered him. Jake continued, "Humanity prepared for conflict with the Krath for 10 years. We studied every battle they fought. We analyzed their formations, their tactics, their technology. We found weaknesses. Then we designed weapons and strategies specifically to exploit those weaknesses." He pulled up footage from the battle. The Krath shields rotate frequencies every 3 seconds. Our sensors can detect the microsecond gap during rotation. Our weapons fire in that exact microsecond. It requires precise timing, which is why we trained our crews for 6 months on nothing else. Vorath stood from his seat. "Commander Morrison, I must ask. You said humanity has prepared defensive strategies for every major military power in the galaxy. Does that include council member species?" The chamber went very quiet. Jake met Voratha's eyes steadily. "Yes, we have defensive contingencies for every military power. We don't want to fight anyone, but if someone attacks us, we'll be ready." "Some might consider that threatening," Vorath said. "Some might consider it prudent," Jake countered. "We're a young species in a galaxy full of empires that have existed for thousands of years. We'd be foolish not to prepare." Kate stepped forward. "The Council needs to understand something important. Humanity's victory over the Krath wasn't about superior technology. It wasn't about superior numbers. It was about superior preparation and willingness to think differently." She changed the display to show historical data. "The Krath have used the same basic tactics for 3,000 years. Why? Because they work. They won 17 conquests using the same formations, the same approaches, the same strategies. They became predictable." A council member spoke up. "Are you saying the Krath were defeated by their own success?" "Exactly," Kate confirmed. "They never needed to evolve because they kept winning. They perfected a system and then stopped innovating. Meanwhile, humanity spent 3,000 years fighting itself," Kate continued. "We tried every possible type of warfare. We made every possible mistake. We learned from all of it." She pulled up more data. "When we reached space, we didn't have established military doctrine. We weren't bound by tradition. We could look at galactic warfare with fresh eyes. We could see patterns that others missed because they were too close to them. Zalara leaned forward. What you're describing is both impressive and concerning. If humanity can defeat the Krath so easily, what prevents you from becoming the next empire that conquers others? Admiral Ryan Carter's face appeared on a holographic display. He was joining the meeting remotely from Earth. Chairwoman, if I may speak. Proceed, Admiral. Ryan's image solidified. Humanity could have destroyed the Krath fleet completely. We had the ability and opportunity. Instead, we disabled their ships and immediately began rescue operations. We saved thousands of Krath lives, including their war leader. That's your answer. We fight to defend, not to conquer. A new hologram appeared next to Ryan. It was war leader Thra himself. Many council members gasped in surprise. The Krath commander looked different than he had a week ago. Less proud, more humble. Chairwoman, I request permission to address the council, Thra said. Permission granted. Thra took a breath. I commanded the fleet that attacked humanity. I expected an easy victory. I was wrong. The humans defeated my entire force in less time than it takes to give a proper battle speech. They could have killed us all. Instead, they showed mercy. He paused. I've spent the past week recovering on a human medical ship. The doctors treated my injuries with the same care they gave their own wounded. The guards treated me with respect, not cruelty. Admiral Carter himself visited me to ensure I had everything I needed. Thra looked around the chamber. I've conquered 17 civilizations. I've seen how victors treat the defeated. The humans are different. They could be monsters. They choose to be heroes instead. The Krath Empire formally withdraws all claims against human territory. We offer peace and friendship to humanity. The chamber erupted in conversation. Kate let it continue for a moment before speaking again. The Krath aren't the only ones who need to understand what happened. This battle revealed something important about humanity's place in the galaxy. She pulled up a new display. We're not trying to replace the Krath as the dominant military power. We're not interested in conquest or empire. What we offer is a different approach to conflict and cooperation. Jake added, humanity has experience with hundreds of different cultures working together. Earth alone has thousands of distinct groups, languages, and traditions. We've learned how to cooperate despite differences. We've learned how to share knowledge and innovate together. What are you proposing? Zalara asked. Kate smiled. We're proposing that humanity's military knowledge becomes available to all Council species. Not our weapons, not our specific tactics, but our approach to strategic thinking, our methods of analyzing problems, our willingness to challenge traditional assumptions. Vorith stood again. You would share your military insights with potential enemies. We'd rather have allies than enemies, Kate replied. The Krath attacked us because they saw us as weak and easy prey. If all Council species understand how we think, they'll realize that attacking humanity is a losing proposition. Prevention is better than conflict. Jake continued, we're also proposing the creation of a strategic innovation group within the Council. Its purpose would be to help member species think differently about challenges, not just military ones. Scientific problems, economic issues, diplomatic deadlocks. Sometimes the solution isn't better technology or more resources. Sometimes it's just a different perspective. A council member asked, and humanity would lead this group. We'd contribute to it, Kate corrected. Every species has unique insights. The key is combining those insights in new ways. Humanity's contribution is our lack of preconceptions. We're new enough to question things that others take for granted. Zalara was quiet for a long moment, her crystalline form shifting colors as she thought. Finally, she spoke. This council has existed for 6,000 years. In that time, we've developed protocols, traditions, and assumptions about how things work. Perhaps that's been our weakness. She looked directly at Kate and Jake. The human delegation's proposal is accepted. The Strategic Innovation Group will be created with representatives from all interested species. Furthermore, humanity's status within the Council is hereby elevated from probationary member to full alliance member with complete voting rights and Council protections. The chamber filled with mixed reactions. Some species applauded, others looked uncertain. A few clearly disagreed but didn't object publicly. Kate bowed respectfully. "Thank you, Chairwoman. Humanity accepts this honor and responsibility." As the official session ended, Council members approached the human delegation. Some offered congratulations, others asked questions about Earth and human culture. A few requested private meetings to discuss strategic matters. Vorath approached last. "Ambassador Sullivan, Commander Morrison, I owe you an apology. I underestimated your species severely." Jake extended his hand. "You analyzed the data you had. Your conclusions were logical. You just didn't have all the variables." Vorath took the offered hand cautiously, then shook it firmly. "I would like to visit Earth someday to understand how humans develop such unconventional thinking." "You'd be welcome," Kate said warmly. "Though I should warn you, we're still figuring out how we think ourselves. Humanity doesn't have all the answers. We just ask different questions." Later, Kate and Jake stood at a viewing window, looking down at Centauri Prime. The planet rotated slowly below them, blue and green like Earth. "We changed everything today," Jake said quietly. "We started changing it last week," Kate corrected. "Today, we just made it official. The question is, what happens next?" Jake smiled. "More species will study humans. Some will try to copy our methods. Others will develop their own innovations in response. The galaxy is going to get more interesting and more competitive." Kate added, "Good. Competition drives innovation. As long as it stays peaceful competition, everyone benefits." Jake looked at his companion. "You know what the really important part of today was?" "What?" "Thrax speaking on our behalf. The Krath could have stayed silent, nursed their wounds, and planned revenge. Instead, their leader publicly thanked us and offered friendship. That takes real courage." Kate nodded. "Former enemies becoming friends. That's the real victory, not the battle. This understanding, respect, cooperation." She pulled out her tablet and checked messages. "Admiral Carter wants to know if we're ready for the next phase, which is teaching other species how we prepared for the Krath battle. Sharing our analytical methods, helping them see their own blind spots." Kate smiled. "Apparently, 17 species have already requested consultations." Jake laughed. "From galactic underdogs to strategic advisors in 1 week. Not bad." "Don't let it go to your head," Kate warned. "We won 1 battle. We prevented 1 war. There's a whole galaxy out there with thousands of potential conflicts. This is just the beginning." "I know," Jake said, still looking at the planet below. "But it's a good beginning. The Council predicted our defeat. We delivered victory. They expected weakness. We showed strength. They assumed we'd be predictable. We proved we're anything but." He turned to face Kate. "But the most important thing we showed them, that strength and mercy aren't opposites. That victory doesn't require cruelty. That the strongest choice is often the kindest one." Kate smiled. "That's very philosophical of you, Commander." "I've had a strange week," Jake replied with a grin. ## Chapter 9, Ripple Effects. Somewhere across the galaxy, in council chambers and militaries, on planets and stations and ships, beings of every species watched recordings of the 12-minute war. They analyzed the tactics. They studied the strategies. They tried to understand how humanity did the impossible. But the real lesson wasn't in the tactics or strategies. It was in the mindset, the willingness to question assumptions, to prepare thoroughly, to think creatively, to show mercy when you could show destruction. Humanity hadn't just won a battle. They'd introduced a new way of thinking to an ancient galaxy, and that would change everything. In the weeks that followed, the changes began to ripple outward. The Strategic Innovation Group was formed with representatives from 27 species. Humans made up only a small fraction of the group, but their analytical methods became the foundation for how the group operated. The first challenge they tackled was not military but scientific. A mysterious radiation phenomenon was causing failures in the power systems of 3 different species colonies. Traditional approaches had failed to solve the problem. Using human-inspired analytical techniques, the group discovered that the radiation wasn't external but was being generated by the colony's own power systems when they interacted with a rare mineral in the planet's crust. The solution required rethinking power generation from the ground up. The success led to more species requesting consultations with the Strategic Innovation Group. The group expanded, adding more representatives and more resources. Meanwhile, the Krath Empire underwent a transformation. War leader Krath returned to his people not as a conqueror but as a reformer. He instituted sweeping changes to their military doctrine, encouraging innovation and adaptation rather than adherence to tradition. Many Krath military leaders resisted these changes, but Krath had been humbled and enlightened by his defeat at human hands. He pushed forward with reforms, inviting human military advisors to help train his officers in new ways of thinking. The first joint Krath-human military exercises were awkward but productive. The Krath had much to learn about flexibility and innovation. The humans, in turn, gained valuable insights into Krath discipline and organization. Other militaries across the galaxy began to experiment with new approaches. The rigid formations and traditional tactics that had dominated space warfare for millennia began to evolve. Ships became more versatile, tactics more adaptive, strategies more creative. Not everyone was pleased with these changes. Species that had maintained power through military superiority found themselves challenged by upstarts adopting new methods. Several conflicts broke out as established powers tried to suppress these changes. But the Strategic Innovation Group mediated many of these disputes, helping traditional powers find ways to adapt rather than fight. The group became a force for peaceful evolution in galactic society. Earth and human colonies benefited from their new status. Trade agreements flourished. Scientific collaborations multiplied. Cultural exchanges enriched human society with new art, music, literature, and philosophy. But humanity faced challenges too. Their new prominence made them a target for those who resented their rapid rise. Several terrorist attacks targeted human installations. The Strategic Innovation Group helped develop new security approaches that balanced protection with civil liberties. Admiral Ryan Carter found himself frequently consulted by other militaries seeking to reform their practices. He established a training academy on Earth where officers from any species could learn human-inspired analytical methods. Captain Lisa Hayes was promoted to admiral and given command of a new rapid response fleet designed to help defend any council member under attack. Her crews became known for their innovative solutions to impossible situations. Dr. Ben Park led a research institute that developed new technologies based on the principles that had defeated the Krath shields. Their breakthroughs revolutionized everything from power generation to medical treatments. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez became an instructor at the Naval Academy, teaching new tactics to the next generation of officers. Her classes were among the most popular and competitive. Commander Alex Bennett led a squadron that demonstrated new fighter tactics at military exhibitions across the galaxy. His precision flying became legendary. Ambassador Kate Sullivan and Commander Jake Morrison continued to represent humanity at the Galactic Council. They worked to ensure that the Strategic Innovation Group remained focused on peaceful cooperation rather than military advantage. 2 years after the 12-Minute War, a new threat emerged from beyond the edge of known space. A mysterious fleet of advanced ships appeared without warning, attacking outer colonies of several Council species. The ships were unlike anything seen before. They moved in ways that defied physics as understood by galactic science. Their weapons passed through shields as if they didn't exist. They appeared and disappeared without using FTL signatures. The Council was in an uproar. Species that had once been military superpowers found themselves helpless against this new threat. Colonies fell one after another. Millions went missing or were killed. The Strategic Innovation Group was tasked with analyzing the threat. Representatives from every species worked around the clock, studying battle recordings, analyzing sensor data, searching for patterns. Humans took the lead, applying their unique analytical methods. They discovered that the mysterious ships weren't actually violating physics but were using a different understanding of it. They operated in additional dimensions that most galactic species couldn't perceive or access. The breakthrough came when Dr. Ben Park's team realized that the weapons weren't passing through shields but were shifting dimensions to bypass them. The key was to develop sensors that could detect these dimensional shifts and shields that could adapt to them. Meanwhile, Admiral Carter worked with military leaders from across the Council to develop new tactics. Traditional formations were useless against enemies who could appear anywhere without warning. They needed a new approach. The solution came from an unlikely source, Commander Alex Bennett, who suggested using fighter squadrons not as offensive weapons but as a distributed sensor network. By coordinating thousands of small ships across a wide area, they could detect the dimensional shifts before the mysterious ships could fully materialize. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez developed new tactics for these distributed networks, emphasizing rapid response and coordinated defense rather than fixed positions. Her methods were adopted by militaries across the Council. The Krath, now allies of humanity, contributed their formidable discipline and organization to the effort. War Leader Thra personally led a task force that combined Krath ships with human technology and tactics. After 6 months of preparation, the combined fleet was ready. They positioned themselves to protect the remaining colonies, using the new tactics and technologies developed by the Strategic Innovation Group. The mysterious fleet arrived, expecting another easy victory. Instead, they found a coordinated defense that could anticipate their every move. The battle lasted not 12 minutes but 3 days, with heavy casualties on both sides. In the end, the Council forces prevailed, not through superior firepower but through superior understanding. They had learned to perceive and operate in the same dimensions as their mysterious enemies. The surviving ships were captured rather than destroyed. When communication was finally established, the truth emerged: these weren't invaders but refugees from a dying universe, seeking a new home but unaware that other intelligent life existed. The Council, guided by the example of humanity's mercy toward the Krath, welcomed the refugees. A new dimension was added to galactic society, literally and figuratively. 5 years after the 12-minute war, the galaxy had transformed. The Strategic Innovation Group had become a permanent institution of the Council, with representatives from over 100 species. Humanity had settled into its role as a bridge between traditional powers and emerging civilizations. Earth had become a center of learning and innovation, with universities and research institutes attracting students from across the galaxy. The Krath Empire had evolved into a more balanced society, valuing innovation as much as tradition. They maintained their military strength but now used it primarily to defend others rather than expand their territory. The dimensional refugees had integrated into galactic society, bringing new knowledge and perspectives that enriched everyone. Their understanding of physics led to breakthroughs in energy, transportation, and medicine. Kate Sullivan had been elected to the Council as humanity's permanent representative. Jake Morrison had retired from the military and served as her advisor. They worked to ensure that the Council remained focused on cooperation rather than conflict. Admiral Ryan Carter had been promoted to Supreme Commander of Council Defense Forces. He oversaw a military that had transformed from a collection of competing forces into a cooperative security organization. Lisa Hayes commanded the flagship of the Council fleet, a vessel that incorporated technology and design principles from dozens of species. Her crew was equally diverse, representing the new era of galactic cooperation. Ben Park led the Council Advanced Research Institute, where scientists from every species collaborated on projects that benefited all. Their work on dimensional physics had revolutionized space travel and communication. Amy Rodriguez had become an admiral, specializing in training officers from across the galaxy in new defensive tactics. Her students returned to their home militaries as agents of change. Alex Bennett had risen to the rank of general, commanding the Council's rapid response forces. His squadrons could deploy anywhere in Council space within hours, providing security and assistance to those in need. 10 years after the 12-minute war, Kate Sullivan stood on the balcony of the Council chambers, looking out at the stars. The galaxy was at peace, experiencing an unprecedented era of cooperation and innovation. Jake joined her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Remember when we stood here before the battle? Everyone thought humanity was finished." Kate smiled. "I remember Voratha's certainty. The simulation, the predictions, the absolute confidence that we would fall. We proved them wrong," Jake said. "We did more than that," Kate corrected. "We changed how everyone thought about strength, about conflict, about possibilities." A chime announced the arrival of a shuttle. The delegation from the Krath Empire had arrived for the annual commemoration of the battle that had transformed both their species. War Leader Thra, now elderly but still commanding, stepped onto the balcony. "Ambassador Sullivan, Commander Morrison. It's good to see you." "Thra," Kate greeted him warmly. "Your delegation grows larger each year." "The young ones want to understand," Thra explained. "They've grown up in a different Krath Empire. They need to know what we were, and why we changed." Admiral Carter arrived next, now white-haired but still vigorous. "The fleet is in position for the commemoration flyby. The Krath and human ships will fly together, as they have every year." Lisa Hayes joined them, followed by Ben Park, Amy Rodriguez, and Alex Bennett. The core group that had planned and executed the impossible victory gathered once again. "Sometimes I still can't believe it worked," Lisa said. "All that planning, all those simulations, and it actually went exactly as we hoped." "That's the thing about thorough preparation," Ben replied. "When you account for every variable, success isn't luck. It's inevitability." Amy looked out at the stars. "I wonder what would have happened if we'd lost that day." "The galaxy would be very different," Jake said. "The Krath would have continued their conquests. The Council would have remained stagnant. Humanity would have been destroyed or enslaved. Instead," Kate added, "we're all here, working together. The Krath are our allies. The Council is stronger than ever. Humanity has found its place." Thra nodded slowly. "Your victory over us was the best thing that ever happened to my species. We were powerful but stagnant. Defeat taught us humility. Mercy taught us compassion. Together, they taught us wisdom." Admiral Carter smiled. "We learned too. We learned that strength without mercy is just brutality. That victory without wisdom is empty. That the greatest power is the power to lift others up, not push them down." The commemoration ceremony began below them. Ships from dozens of species moved in formation, a testament to the unity that had grown from humanity's unconventional defense. As the human and Krath ships passed in review, their crews standing at attention, Kate reflected on how far they had come. From a desperate plea for 48 hours to save their species, to becoming architects of a new galactic order. "The Council predicted our defeat," Jake said, echoing his thoughts from years ago. "We delivered victory. They expected weakness. We showed strength. They assumed we'd be predictable. We proved we're anything but." He turned to face Kate. "But the most important thing we showed them, that strength and mercy aren't opposites. That victory doesn't require cruelty. That the strongest choice is often the kindest one." Kate smiled. "That's very philosophical of you, Commander." "I've had a strange decade," Jake replied with a grin. The ceremony concluded with a moment of silence for those who had fallen on both sides of the conflict. Then the ships dispersed, returning to their duties of protecting and serving the Council. As the group turned to leave the balcony, Thra paused. "You know, I sometimes wonder what would have happened if you had destroyed our fleet that day, as you could have." "We couldn't," Admiral Carter said simply. "It wasn't in our nature." "And that," Thra replied, "is why you won. Not just the battle, but the peace that followed." The group dispersed, each returning to their duties, each continuing to shape the new galaxy they had created through courage, innovation, and mercy. 20 years after the 12-Minute War, a new generation of officers studied the battle in military academies across the galaxy. It had become the classic case study in innovative thinking and strategic planning. At the Earth Military Academy, a class of cadets from 17 different species listened to a holographic lecture by Admiral Amy Rodriguez, now retired but still teaching occasionally. The key to understanding the human victory over the Krath, she explained, is recognizing that humanity didn't win by being stronger or more advanced. They won by being more adaptable, more creative, and more thorough in their preparation. A Krath cadet raised a hand. But how did they develop such innovative thinking in such a short time? Humanity had only been in space for 150 years. Amy smiled. That's exactly the point. Humanity's inexperience was their advantage. They weren't bound by thousands of years of military tradition. They could look at every problem with fresh eyes. They could question assumptions that other species took for granted. A human cadet asked, could those same tactics work today against a modern fleet? That's the wrong question, Amy replied. The specific tactics wouldn't work today because everyone has studied them and adapted. The method of developing those tactics still works. Question everything. Prepare thoroughly. Think creatively. Show mercy when you could show destruction. She changed the display to show more recent battles where these principles had been applied successfully. The Strategic Innovation Group has developed dozens of new approaches to conflict and cooperation based on these same principles. The 12-Minute War wasn't just a battle. It was the beginning of a new way of thinking. Meanwhile, at the Council Advanced Research Institute, Dr. Ben Park, now in his 8th decade but still actively researching, reviewed the latest breakthrough in dimensional physics. It's fascinating, he told his team of researchers from 12 different species. The dimensional refugees brought us knowledge that has revolutionized our understanding of the universe. But what's even more fascinating is how quickly we've integrated that knowledge with our existing science. A young researcher from the Xylarian species, beings who communicated through changing light patterns, shimmered with curiosity. Is this rapid integration related to the human methods of innovation? Ben nodded. Exactly. The human approach isn't about having all the answers. It's about asking the right questions and being willing to challenge assumptions. When we combined that approach with the knowledge brought by the dimensional refugees, we made breakthroughs that would have taken centuries otherwise. At the Galactic Council, Ambassador Kate Sullivan, now in her final term before retirement, mediated a dispute between two member species over trade rights. The conflict had the potential to escalate into military confrontation. Instead of traditional diplomacy, she applied the principles of the Strategic Innovation Group. Both of you are focusing on dividing the existing resources, she explained. What if we expanded the resources instead? She brought in experts who developed a new method of resource extraction that doubled the available supply. The dispute was resolved not by compromise but by innovation. As she prepared to leave her office that evening, Kate received a message from Admiral Ryan Carter, now semi-retired but still serving as a senior advisor to Council Defense Forces. Read this, his message said, attaching a report on a new potential threat from unexplored regions of space. Kate read the report with concern. A new species had been observed, apparently highly advanced and potentially hostile. Council scouts had observed what appeared to be military preparations. She called Jake, now also semi-retired and serving as her senior advisor. We have a new challenge, she said when he answered. Humanity will rise to it, Jake replied confidently. We always do. But this time we won't be alone, Kate said. The entire council will face this together, using the methods we developed. The Strategic Innovation Group was convened. Representatives from every species analyzed the threat. Using human-inspired methods, they developed not a military response but a diplomatic one. The council sent a delegation including humans, Krath, dimensional refugees, and representatives from a dozen other species. They approached the new species not with threats but with offers of friendship and cooperation. The response was surprising. The new species wasn't preparing for war but for defense against what they perceived as hostile expansion by the council. Their military preparations were defensive, not offensive. Once this misunderstanding was cleared, the new species agreed to join the Council, bringing yet another perspective and set of knowledge to galactic civilization. 30 years after the 12-Minute War, the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. The Council had expanded to include over 200 species, cooperating in ways that would have been unimaginable before humanity's arrival. On Earth, a young woman named Sarah Morrison graduated from the Advanced Strategic Studies program. She was Jake and Kate's granddaughter, born into a very different galaxy than her grandparents had known. Her first assignment was to the Strategic Innovation Group, where she joined a team analyzing long-term galactic trends. Their latest report painted a picture of a galaxy facing new challenges, resource pressures, population growth, and the philosophical questions posed by artificial intelligence advancement. Sarah's contribution to the report was a proposal for a new approach to these challenges. Drawing on her family's legacy, she suggested applying the principles that had won the 12-Minute War to these broader societal issues. The key, she wrote in her proposal, is not to find solutions to individual problems but to develop new ways of thinking that allow us to address multiple challenges simultaneously. Just as my grandfather's generation didn't win by fighting harder but by fighting smarter, we need to solve these issues not with more resources but with better thinking. Her proposal was adopted by the Strategic Innovation Group and became the foundation for the next phase of galactic development. New educational programs were established, teaching not just knowledge but methods of thinking. Meanwhile, at the Council Defense Forces Academy, a young Krath named Thrake, named after the legendary war leader who had transformed his species, prepared for his final exam. Unlike his ancestors, he wasn't training just for combat but for peacekeeping and disaster response. His final simulation involved coordinating a multi-species response to a planetary catastrophe. Using the latest human-inspired tactical methods, he successfully organized rescue and relief efforts, saving millions of simulated lives. His instructor, a veteran of the 12-Minute War, marked his evaluation with the highest possible score. "You understand," she wrote, "that the greatest military victories are not those that defeat enemies but those that save lives." At the Council Advanced Research Institute, a team led by Dr. Elena Park, Ben's granddaughter, made a breakthrough in artificial intelligence ethics. They developed a framework for ensuring that AI systems would serve the interests of all species, not just their creators. The breakthrough was immediately adopted across the galaxy, preventing potential conflicts between organic and artificial intelligence. The framework became known as the Park Protocols, honoring both Ben and Elena's contributions. Chapter 15, Looking Forward. 50 years after the 12-Minute War, Kate Sullivan, now in her final years, stood on the same balcony where she had watched the commemoration so many years ago. The galaxy was at peace, experiencing an era of unprecedented cooperation and innovation. Jake joined her, his steps slower now but his presence as comforting as ever. "Remember when we stood here before the battle? Everyone thought humanity was finished." Kate smiled. "I remember Voratha's certainty. The simulation, the predictions, the absolute confidence that we would fall. We proved them wrong," Jake said. "We did more than that," Kate corrected. "We changed how everyone thought about strength, about conflict, about possibilities." Below them, a new class of cadets graduated from the Council Defense Forces Academy. Humans, Krath, dimensional refugees, and dozens of other species stood together, ready to serve the galaxy they had inherited. "The torch has been passed," Jake said quietly. "And they carry it well," Kate replied. "They've taken what we started and built something we could barely imagine." A message arrived from Sarah Morrison, now a senior leader in the Strategic Innovation Group. She was announcing a new initiative to extend Council methods to unexplored regions of the galaxy, bringing cooperation and innovation to species who had never known such things. "She has your vision," Jake said. "And your determination," Kate replied. "And the best of both of us." As they watched the celebration below, Kate reflected on how far they had come. From a desperate plea for 48 hours to save their species, to becoming architects of a new galactic order. The Council predicted our defeat, Jake said, echoing his thoughts from decades ago. We delivered victory. They expected weakness. We showed strength. They assumed we'd be predictable. We proved we're anything but. He turned to face Kate. But the most important thing we showed them, that strength and mercy aren't opposites. That victory doesn't require cruelty. That the strongest choice is often the kindest one. Kate smiled. That's very philosophical of you, Commander. I've had a strange half-century, Jake replied with a grin. As the sun set over Earth, casting long shadows across the balcony, Kate and Jake stood together, watching the new generation carry forward the legacy they had begun so many years ago. The 12-minute war had ended, but its true impact was just beginning. In the decades that followed, humanity's unconventional defense had become the foundation for a new era of galactic civilization, one defined not by conflict but by cooperation, not by strength but by wisdom, not by victory but by understanding. And somewhere in the vastness of space, beyond the edge of known territory, new challenges awaited, challenges that this new galactic civilization would face together, using the lessons learned from 12 minutes that changed the course of history. 10 years before the Council meeting, in the sterile depths of a hidden research facility orbiting a distant brown dwarf, the real war was being fought. It was a war of equations, of engineering tolerances, of sheer intellectual will. The enemy was not a fleet of ships, but a problem so complex it had defeated 17 civilizations. Dr. Eva Rostova wiped a smudge of grease from her forehead, leaving a dark streak on her skin. Her station was a chaotic symphony of holographic displays, tool-littered workbenches, and half-eaten ration packs. For 3 years, this room had been her world. The problem she was tackling was the cornerstone of Admiral Carter's audacious plan, how to get through the Krath shield. It was not a simple energy barrier. The Krath, having perfected warfare over millennia, had created a defense with 3 interlocking layers. The outer was a kinetic diffuser, turning physical projectiles into harmless clouds of superheated gas. The middle was an energy deflector, capable of absorbing and redistributing the power of any known laser or plasma weapon. The inner layer was a radiation and thermal shield, protecting the ship from the harsh environment of space and the secondary effects of battle. But the genius, the true nightmare, was the rotation. All 3 layers cycled through frequencies and states every 3.4 seconds. It was a seamless, impenetrable dance of defense. To hit a Krath ship was to hit a moving target that was never where your sensors said it was. Conventional warfare had declared it unbreakable. Eva Rostova was not conventional. Her team had run trillions of simulations. They had fired every conceivable type of weapon at every conceivable variation of the shield. They had tried brute force, overwhelming the shield with more power than it could absorb, a tactic that required more energy than a small sun. They had tried sustained fire, hoping to catch a lag in the rotation. The shield's cycling was too perfect. They had tried exotic weapons, dimensional rifts, quantum tunneling torpedoes. Nothing worked. Failure had become a constant companion. Each dead end was a fresh mountain of data to climb, only to find another, higher peak behind it. The pressure was immense. Admiral Carter visited monthly, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the frantic energy of the lab. He never pushed, never demanded. He only asked 2 questions: what have you learned, and what is the next path to try? The breakthrough came not from a new weapon, but from a new way of looking. It was during a late-night session, fueled by caffeine and desperation. Eva was watching a slow-motion simulation of the shield rotation, a visualization of the energy states. She was not looking for a weakness in the shield itself, but for a weakness in the system. "Play it again," she said to her AI assistant, her voice hoarse. But this time, overlay the power conduits between the layers. The hologram shimmered. Lines of brilliant blue light appeared, showing the flow of energy that maintained the shield. As the layers rotated, the conduits had to momentarily disconnect and reconnect to power the new configuration. It was a seamless process, taking less than a nanosecond. It was a gap so small it was considered statistically insignificant. "Stop," Eva whispered. "Magnify section 7 gamma." Factor in the quantum uncertainty principle at the point of reconnection. The AI complied. The image zoomed in until the energy conduit looked like a chasm between two cliffs. As the shield rotated, the bridge of power across that chasm had to be broken and reformed. For a period too short for most sensors to even register, for a duration that existed on the very edge of reality, there was no power. There was nothing. It was a microsecond of absolute vulnerability. Eva felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. It was not a flaw in the Krath design. It was a fundamental, unavoidable law of physics applied to a technological system. The Krath had likely dismissed it as unexploitable. To fire a weapon that would arrive at that exact microsecond, from the exact right angle, with the exact right frequency, was like trying to shoot a specific atom in a hurricane. But it was possible. The next 2 years were spent turning that possibility into a reality. They had to redesign every weapon system on the 80 ships earmarked for the plan. They needed new sensors that could predict the gap's formation with 99.9999% accuracy. They needed new targeting computers that could fire at that exact instant. And they needed gunnery crews who could operate this new, impossibly complex system under the stress of battle. Eva's team worked alongside military contractors, integrating their new technology into the existing hulls of the fleet. It was a monumental undertaking, done in complete secrecy. The official records for the ships being retrofitted listed them as undergoing routine maintenance or system upgrades. The crews who were transferred to these ships were told they were part of a deep space training exercise. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Thorne was one of those crewmen. A veteran gunnery sergeant with 20 years of service, he was initially skeptical. His new station on the cruiser Valiant was unlike anything he had ever seen. The controls were more complex, the feedback from the systems was overwhelming. "Sir, with all due respect," he told his commanding officer during a training simulation, "this is insane. We're trying to hit a target that isn't there. The computer is telling us to fire when our sensors show a fully functional shield." "The computer is seeing something your eyes can't, Sergeant," his commander replied patiently. "Trust the system. That's all you have to do." The training was brutal. They ran the simulation 10,000 times. In the first 9,800 runs, they failed. The shots impacted the shield and dissipated harmlessly. The crews grew frustrated, then angry, then resigned. They felt like they were part of a fool's errand. Then, around the 9,800 first run, something clicked. Thorne stopped trying to outthink the computer. He stopped relying on his decades of experience. He simply became an extension of the machine. He watched the data stream, felt the rhythm of the system, and when the firing cue flashed, he reacted without thought. On the main screen, the simulated Krath ship's shield flickered. The pulse from the Valiant's cannon passed through it and struck the hull. The simulated ship went dark. Silence filled the Valiant's bridge. Then, a single cheer. It grew until the entire crew was shouting, hugging, clapping each other on the back. They had done the impossible. In the observation deck overlooking the bridge, Admiral Ryan Carter watched the replay, a rare smile on his face. He turned to Dr. Eva Rostova, who was standing beside him. "It works," she said, her voice filled with a mixture of relief and awe. "It works," Carter confirmed. "Now we just have to do it for real. Against 300 of them." Eva looked at the cheering crew on the bridge. "They're ready, Admiral. We've given them the tool. They've made it their own." Carter nodded. "The next phase begins tomorrow. We deploy the fleet. We position the pieces on the board. We wait for the Krath to take the bait." He looked out the viewport at the stars. For a decade, he had carried the weight of this secret. He had diverted resources, bent regulations, and risked his career on a plan that everyone else would have called madness. But he had steadied the Krath. He had seen their arrogance, their reliance on tradition, their inability to imagine that a younger species could possibly outthink them. He was not just preparing to win a battle. He was preparing to teach the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. The cost of failure was the extinction of his species. The reward of success was not just survival, but the chance to redefine humanity's place in the universe. The real war, the war for the future, was about to begin. War Leader Thra stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Conqueror's Fist. The bridge was a cavernous space, a monument to Krath military tradition. Armored plates covered every surface, displaying the battle honors of 1,000 victories. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and the low, guttural sounds of his Krath crew performing their duties with practiced efficiency. He was a veteran of 17 conquests. His name was spoken with fear and respect across a dozen sectors. He had never known defeat. The campaign against the humans, a species that had only achieved space flight 150 years ago, was supposed to be a formality. A final, glorious addition to his legacy before his retirement. The fleet maintains perfect formation, War Leader, his tactical officer reported. We will transition out of FTL in 5 minutes. The human colony of New Haven is directly ahead. Status of the human defenses? Thra asked, his voice a low rumble. Minimal, War Leader. 80 vessels, mostly frigates and cruisers. They are deploying in a standard defensive perimeter between us and the planet. A futile gesture. Thra nodded. It was exactly as predicted. The simulations run by the Krath High Command had been conclusive. The humans would be overwhelmed in 4 to 6 hours. Their primitive tactics and inadequate technology were no match for Krath military supremacy. Open a channel, Thra commanded. Let us offer them the chance for a dignified surrender. It is tradition. His communications officer complied. The channel opened across all frequencies. Thra straightened to his full height, his scaled frame casting a long shadow over the bridge. Humans of New Haven and Earth, he began, his voice amplified to carry authority and menace. You face the Krath Empire. For 3 millennia, we have brought order to the galaxy. We have crushed the weak and elevated the strong. Your time has come. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Resist and we will make examples of your entire species. You have 60 seconds to comply. He cut the channel and settled back into his command chair. He expected a desperate reply. A plea for mercy. A defiant, foolish declaration of resistance. He did not expect what came next. A human voice, calm and filled with an unnerving confidence, replied. War Leader Thra, this is Admiral Ryan Carter of the Human Defense Fleet. I have 5 words for you. You came to the wrong neighborhood. Thra's eyes narrowed in confusion. The insolence was unexpected, but it was the confidence that was truly baffling. Did they not understand their situation? Before he could issue a new order, the tactical officer shouted in alarm. War Leader. The human fleet, they are breaking formation. They are everywhere. On the main tactical display, the 80 blue dots representing the human ships had vanished. Then, they reappeared, scattered all across the display. They were no longer in a defensive line. They were in small groups, appearing and disappearing in impossible bursts of speed. What is that? Thra demanded, rising to his feet. Report. Micro FTL jumps, War Leader. Short-range bursts. They're moving too fast for our targeting solutions to lock on. They're not attacking. They're repositioning. Thra felt a flicker of unease. This was not in the simulations. This was not standard doctrine. It was chaotic, undisciplined. It had to be a trick. All ships, maintain hammer formation, he commanded, his voice regaining its authority. They are trying to confuse us. Hold position and wait for them to commit to an attack. Concentrate fire on the largest cluster. But the humans did not commit. They continued their impossible dance, jumping and repositioning, surrounding the Krath fleet, a swarm of hornets circling a sleeping giant. Thra's unease grew into a genuine sense of disquiet. This was not the behavior of a defeated foe. This was the behavior of a predator. Then, it happened. Without warning, every human ship fired at once. Not a chaotic barrage, but a single, perfectly synchronized wave of energy and projectiles. On the tactical display, dozens of red icons representing Krath ships on the flanks suddenly went dark. "Report!" Thra roared, his composure shattering. "The Gladius, the Ravager, the Bloodletter. 12 destroyers have lost main power," the tactical officer stammered, his voice filled with disbelief. "Their shields are intact, their weapons are armed, but everything is offline. It is as if something just reached inside and turned them off." Thra stared at the display, his mind refusing to accept what he was seeing. Their shields were the most advanced in the galaxy. They had never been breached. How could the humans have done this? He got his answer a moment later when another wave of fire struck the command cluster where his flagship was stationed. The Conqueror's fist shuddered violently. Alarms screamed throughout the ship. "Shields at 80%, a voice shouted. "No, 70. They are dropping." "The shields are not failing," his science officer screamed, looking at his readings in terror. "They are being bypassed. The weapons are passing through them as if they are not there." Before Thra could issue another order, a third wave struck his ship directly. This time, the impact was catastrophic. The bridge exploded in a shower of sparks and metal. Thra was thrown across the deck, his head striking a console with a sickening crack. He struggled to his knees, blood streaming from a wound on his head. The main view screen was cracked, but through it, he could see the battle. It was not a battle. It was a slaughter. His proud, undefeated fleet was being systematically dismantled. Human ships appeared out of nowhere, fired their impossible weapons, and vanished. Krath cruisers, the terror of a dozen species, were sitting dead in space, their lights flickering out. He saw a flight of small human bombers, like a swarm of insects, heading directly for his ship. His point defense systems fired desperately, but the bombers were too small, too fast, too maneuverable. They slipped through the fire. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that he was about to die. The bomb struck. The Conqueror's fist convulsed. The lights went out, replaced by the red glow of emergency lighting. The silence that followed was more terrifying than the explosions. He had lost. In less time than it took to prepare his evening meal, his fleet, his legacy, his entire understanding of warfare had been utterly destroyed. Not by a superior force, but by an incomprehensible one. He lay on the deck of his dying ship, the war leader of the Krath Empire, defeated by a species he had considered beneath his notice. And as his consciousness faded, one thought echoed in his mind, the human's final words. "You came to the wrong neighborhood." The understatement, the sheer, arrogant confidence of it, was the most terrifying thing of all. On the bridge of the human cruiser Valiant, Chief Petty Officer Marcus Thorne felt a grim satisfaction as his target, a Krath heavy cruiser, went dark. His crew whooped and cheered, but Thorne's eyes remained fixed on his display. He was a professional. The celebration would come later. "Valiant to all ships," Admiral Carter's voice came over the comm, calm and steady. "Phase 1 complete. The enemy fleet is neutralized. Begin Phase 2. Rescue and recovery. I repeat, rescue and recovery. Target weapons and engines only. Disable, do not destroy. Let's bring this in clean." Thorne relayed the order to his gunnery crews. The mood on the bridge shifted from triumphant to focused. The easy part was over. The hard part was about to begin. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez on the dancing blade was already moving. "Helm, take us alongside the Krath cruiser we just disabled. Sensors, scan for life signs and structural integrity. Engineering, prepare emergency repair teams and medical shuttles." Her bridge crew, though buzzing with adrenaline, executed her commands with precision. They had drilled this part of the plan just as rigorously as the battle itself. "Ma'am," her sensor officer reported, "I'm reading multiple life signs on the Krath vessel. Their hull is breached in 3 sections. Life support is failing in those areas. They're putting out a distress call, but their main comms are down. Get a repair team over there," Amy ordered. "Patch their life support." Get their medical teams to our med bay if they need it. And open a short-range channel. Let's talk to them. The channel opened to a scene of chaos on the Krath Bridge. Smoke, emergency lighting, and crew members in shock. A Krath officer, his scales singed and his uniform torn, stared at the viewscreen in disbelief. "This is Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez of the human ship Dancing Blade," Amy said, her voice firm but not aggressive. "We are not going to fire on you again. We are sending assistance. Please cooperate with our teams." The Krath officer just stared, unable to process the words. Defeated enemies did not send assistance. They took prisoners, they enslaved, they executed. They did not patch life support. This scene was playing out across the battlefield. Human ships moved among the disabled Krath vessels, not as conquerors, but as first responders. Shuttles filled with engineers and doctors raced from ship to ship. They boarded Krath vessels, not with weapons drawn, but with medical kits and repair tools. On some ships, they were met with suspicion and fear. Krath warriors, trained from birth to fight to the death, could not comprehend what was happening. On others, there was quiet resignation. A few, a very few, even accepted the help with a grudging sense of relief. Commander Alex Bennett and his fighter squadron were tasked with security. They patrolled the battlefield, ensuring no disabled Krath ship tried to reactivate its weapons or self-destruct. 7 to command, Bennett's voice crackled over the comm. "I've got a destroyer here trying to get its point defense cannons back online. Requesting permission to disable their weapon systems permanently." "Permission granted, 7, Admiral Carter's voice replied. "But use minimal force. Target the weapon emplacements only. Leave their power and life support intact." "Copy that, command." Bennett's squadron swooped in. Instead of using powerful missiles that could tear the ship apart, they used their precision laser cannons, firing short, controlled bursts at the weapon turrets. The cannons melted into useless slag, but the rest of the ship was unharmed. It was like a surgeon carefully removing a tumor, leaving the surrounding tissue untouched. On the Council observer ship, Voreth watched the scene unfold, his mind struggling to reconcile what he was seeing with his lifetime of military experience. He had seen dozens of post-battle fields. There were always scenes of destruction, of floating debris, of escape pods fleeing into the void. This was different. The battlefield was quiet. The disabled Krath ships were not exploding or breaking apart. They were stable. Human ships were docked with them, their hulls connected by pressurized tubes. Humans were moving back and forth, not as conquerors, but as helpers. "They're saving them," his assistant said, his voice filled with wonder. "They're saving the Krath." Voreth could only nod. He had predicted humanity's extinction. He had been so certain, so confident in his data, in his experience. He had dismissed their confidence as pride, their request for time as folly. He had been wrong about everything. He looked at the timer on his display. 18 minutes since the battle began. The Krath fleet, the most feared military force in the galaxy, was defeated. Not just defeated, but neutralized, contained, and now, being cared for by its victors. He thought of War Leader Thraud. A proud, arrogant warrior. Voreth wondered what was going through his mind at that moment. The humiliation would be unbearable. But to be saved by those you had come to destroy? That was a wound that went deeper than pride. It was a wound to the very soul of a warrior culture. "Record everything," Voreth said again, his voice now quiet, almost reverent. "Every transmission, every sensor reading. Every act of mercy. This is not just a battle recording. This is a historical document. The galaxy needs to see this. They need to understand." He finally understood what Commander Morrison had meant in the council chamber. "You have access to everything we've shown you, but there's a difference between what you see and what you understand." Voreth had seen the human military databases. He had seen their ship designs, their weapon specs, their battle records. But he had not understood the people behind them. He had not understood their capacity for preparation, their innovative thinking, their relentless drive. And most of all, he had not understood their capacity for mercy. The Krath had fought for conquest, for glory, for the thrill of dominance. Humanity, it seemed, fought for something else entirely. They fought to defend, and when the fight was over, they fought to save. In that moment, Vorith, the old reptilian war marshal, realized that humanity was not just a new military power. They were a new kind of power. And the galaxy would never be the same.